Good evening, folks. Welcome back to Hive Prometheus. Today, I'd like to go ahead and go through a little bit of a wish list that I have for the upcoming data slate based off of points increases or decreases that I think are necessary right now to keep Tyranids in that 55 to 45% win rate bracket that GW has tried to set for themselves as a standard for match play. If you look at the last 4 to 6 weeks of win rate for Tyranids in Leviathan GTs, it fluctuates anywhere between 42.5% to 44%. Part of that could be the number of matches during holiday play, so it gives us a low sample size. However, as newer codexes and other metas have sort of evolved with Necrons and Space Marines and Eldar, even with their necessary nerfs at this point, they still end up being pretty dominant on the tabletop. The first set of numbers I'm going to go through on the sheet that I have lined out is a soft consensus on points, decreases, or increases that the Tyranny community in the Discord and personal belief of mine to kind of bring Tyranids in line with their strength, which is compounding multiple layers of buffs on top of each other. It's strength in numbers and having them all synergize together is what gives them that strength. I think right now with the points for certain units makes it so that you have to end up picking and choosing between things that normally would synergize really well. And I feel like we're at like the 93% mark for some things. I think if we were able to bring about 7% more points worth of stuff, about 60 to 100 points extra in lists, that would give us one extra tech piece, or we'd be able to invest into larger monsters. And specifically, I think some of the monsters that we would want to bring are just a little too high above the threshold of what is already efficient, like Exocrines at 135 and Maleceptors at 170. A lot of the things in that price range, it's sad, but you have to compare it to those. And if you're not getting a bang for your buck, you have to have a specific detachment that takes into it, that takes advantage of stratagems or detachment abilities. So to reiterate, the first set of numbers I'll go through is just a blanket wish list. It's any or all things I'd love to see as a change to Tyranid units points and some rules that I think are necessary to change. The second set of points I'll be going through are what do I realistically think I'm going to get. I know I'm not going to get everything, and I do think some things are going to go up and some things will come down, but I think for the things that are very efficient and used often right now, they'll go up 5 or 10 points per unit. I do think you'll have things that are orbiting units within a list that'll come down a larger amount. Because I think with being at about a 42 to 44% win rate, GW has separate numbers, and they do think we're in the 45 to 48, but we're not. I think GW cooks their numbers just a little bit, partially to make themselves look like they're doing the job better. But if you look at Goonhammer's 40k stats, you can see a lot of the recorded games that come in don't have us anywhere near 48. Our win rate has essentially dropped precipitously, a 0.5% per week since they released those numbers. So we are at about 42 or 43% on a good day. Part of that has to do with an evolving meta with newer armies like Black Templars, Space Marines, and Necrons getting either codex supplements, and a lot of those lists are things that Tyranids can't necessarily deal with because we do well at playing the game and scoring, but punching up against specific units and specific lists ends up being a great difficulty. I think point decreases would also help it so that we could bring in either slightly more expensive tech pieces or one additional tech piece to help us in sort of the arms race of punching up against armies like Eldar, Votann, Black Templars, Orcs, Thousand Suns, armies such as that. So why don't I usher us over to the sheet here. All right, so starting at the top here, I have Swarmlord. I'd like to see him go down by at least 30 points. If you look at the specific instances in which we would need extra command points rather than Will of the Hive Mind to get free strats, when comparing Swarmlord and a Hive Tyrant, specifically looking at the usage of Will of the Hive Mind for free battle tactics, the cheaper cost and the specific strength of detachments such as Nexus or Invasion make it so that a Hive Tyrant or even a Winged Hive Tyrant is going to be taken over Swarmlord much more often. I think I've run Swarmlord once out of the 30 or so games that I've played in 10th edition so far with Tyranids. 30 points would make it so that he's an attractive choice, specifically for the detachment that you would want to run him in. I think there are some detachments that you would want the extra CP. Detachments that you potentially would want to run him in are Assimilation Swarm or Unending Swarm. potentially to bring back a block of battle line that you lose for those 2 CP. And some of the better strats for Assimilation Swarm are actually 2 command points, and they are not battle tactics. Going to the Winged Hive Tyrant, I think for what he brings, he only has 1 melee profile or 1 gun. His psychic ability to take away attacks is nice, and I think it would do well into Orcs or Black Templars, things that we normally need sort of a tech piece to soften the blow of melee a little bit. I think they just need a little extra shave. Carnifexes, I'd realistically like to see them go down by 25. We saw a similar point decrease for Death Guard when they had their Myphitic Blight Haulers and their Blight Drones go down to 100 points each, and they are essentially the same damage and defensive profile. Psychophages, I'd like to go down but 25 as well. As of right now, other than a Harvester unit, you're bringing Psychophages for the 5-up Female Pain that he has in the 6-up Female Pain bubble, which can be really good for a mass number of bodies. However, for 125, for 10 more points, you have an Exocrine, but as a part of an army is a really great compounding effect to the defensive profile of other Tyranid units. Broodlord, I think, is okay for what he does right now. I think he's a little overtuned. I think a 10-point shave would help bring him in line, as well as a 1-point decrease per model with Gene Stealers, depending on the Hive fleet that you're running in. If it's Vanguard, you're trying to move quickly and take as much ground as possible. An Invasion fleet, you can overrun with them, so you can potentially throw them back into a building after killing an enemy. I think they just need a slight decrease. So these two together would bring a block of them down 20 points. So it'd bring it to 240, which is still an investment. It's still expensive, but I think 260 is just, it's too much. It's too much for a full block of 10 and essentially Lieutenant. Hormagaunts, I think, are okay right now, but I think when you look at them comparatively to Gargoyles, they're not as fast. They don't have the bonus to deep striking. Yeah, they have advance and charge, and their melee is okay. But I think they just need to go down just a little bit just to help out Unending Swarm. Same thing with Termagants. I think Termagants for the profile are fine. I think the 5-up save is surprising to me whenever I do play with Gaunts because I'm so used to having that 6-up save historically. So Gaunts and Cover get 4-ups now. But I think Termagants right now are strictly better than Hormagaunts just for the special weapon they can bring. Having the Strangle Web, that's a torrent weapon with devastating wounds, is really good just to get a cheeky 1 or 2 dev wounds on a vehicle that you haven't been able to kill. Screamer Killers, I mean, they're super Carnifexes. Honestly, they shouldn't be 170. Their shooting is not good, but I think if we're going to use them as a tech piece to get extra battle shocks in Synaptic Nexus, the battle shock only lasts until their command phase if they're not below half strength. So it essentially is just to make it so that they don't have strats if you charge them. Having more attacks, strength 10, AP 2 for 3 damage, pretty fun, pretty good profile. Realistically, I think the model and the rules are fine. They're good. It needs to come down a lot to be usable. Tyranids, I realistically, with the rules it has now, it lost -1 damage and it has the Blade of Carapace rule where it can blank a shot once per turn. I think it needs to go back down to 200. Yeah, it's tanky. It's a 2-up save, 16 wounds, T12, which is one of our more defensive profiles in the entirety of our codex. But for 245 points, it's laughable. I mean, I think 200 is just fair. Zoanthropes, I realistically would like to see go back to 90. I think 110 is overtuned. It's just 3 last cannons, and people are not using them to blast away infantry. A lot of times, if we can't deal with infantry, we're throwing Gene Stealers or move blocking. These need to be cheap tech pieces, more than 30 points a base for them, especially if you're being shot at with 3 damage weapons. There's a 50% chance that you don't roll that 4-up invuln, and they're just gone. And they're cheap enough that you're not going to put the Feel No Pain on them needlessly in Invasion Fleet. These, at this point, are things that I take in squads of 3, and I take 2 squads of them, and I outflank because the 24-inch range last cannon is really only good against things that are going to move up the field towards you. They're not good for backline armies. The Norn Emissary, I think, needs to come down about 30 points. Yeah, it's beefy. It does not do nearly as much damage as I imagined it would. It's a defensive profile. So if you're going to spend an 1/8 of your army on something that's going to sit on objective and hopefully score 5 primary points every turn of the game, I don't think paying 290 for it is fair. Other armies can spend a boatload of points and get a beat stick or an incredible tech piece. Similarly, I think assimilators for the supposed cruise missile that they were supposed to be in lieu of Dimacrins going to Legends, rest in peace. This is another unit that doesn't have advance and charge. It doesn't have the assimilator keyword to be taken in the assimilation swarm so they can heal. He is way too many points. 310 is a laughable amount of points. He needs to be down, potentially even lower. I might even edit that and just say bring them both down to 260. They do wildly different things. Emissary, your singular purpose is always putting them on objective, and assimilator's singular purpose is always going to be going after the biggest thing and trying to trade. Hopefully it's worth more than 260 points. So I think if GW wants to continue selling these kits, other than them just being cool, they need to be good on the tabletop too. They need some massive points decreases. Tyrant Guard have essentially not been brought with your Neuro Tyrants or your Hive Tyrants anymore because it's a needless tax on something that you can just hide behind a building anyway. I think if you drop it by 10 for the 3, they become a little bit more attractive for extra wounds. Trigons I think are fine. I think just a little boost of points so that we can have some cheaper monsters. Bring him down to 170 then makes you wonder if you want to bring that second or third Maleceptor, or if you'd rather have a tech piece to deep strike outside of 3 inches. He is OC4. You can really throw a wrench in people's game plan. Molochs, now that I've tried them out, I think are good. They're cheap monsters. I think they do exactly what they should. They do a couple mortals, and then if they stay alive, they can charge, and they get a ton of Strength 8 AP2 1 damage attacks. They're great infantry clears. I just want to see a little bit of a shave, again, to give us cheap monsters, because Exocrines are 135. Wing Tyranid Primes are laughably expensive at 80 points. I think they need to be 60. They're a 4-up save, 6 wound guy, and you're only putting them with warriors, so I think an 80-point tax to give them sustained hits is way too much. Units that are not necessarily seen or used, and they're kind of a little bit of the laughingstock of the Tyranid model range right now. Toxicrins, just because of their model, I think need to come down about 55 before even being considered on the tabletop. They're 200 right now. They're crazy expensive. Both are flyers, Harpy and Hive Crown. The flyer rolls are not good right now. Essentially, Harpies and Hive Crowns need to come down a massive number of points if you want to have some list diversity. As for my rules wish list, I really want them to give Assault keyword to Pyrovores. They only move 5 inches. They're on a huge 80mm base now, and their Flamer only extends 12 inches. I think a fix for Toxicrins right now is, due to their Spore Cloud that they emanate, they have a Hypertoxic Miasma. I think they essentially should have a monstrous Lone Op, so that they cannot be targeted outside of 18 inches. This would at least give them the ability to move, shoot their tentacles, and make a charge on something without just getting blasted away, because you can see the model from any angle on any terrain board ever, because the tentacles can be shot. I think assimilators, in order to be the cruise missile beat stick that they're supposed to be, need to be able to get up the board. If they don't have advance and charge, they're a joke. Nobody takes them. All people take emissaries to stand on objectives and get primary. I would also like to see them gain the assimilation swarm keyword, because they're assimilators in the assimilation swarm. If the points for Tyrant Effectors do go back down to 200, I don't expect a wording change on their rule. However, if they stay close to or around the same 245 points, I would really like a wording change on their Ablative Carapace rule to set the damage of an incoming weapon to 0 once per game, not just a single attack, or 1 attack once per turn. That way it's either something that it gets rid of a lot of damage immediately early on in the game if you need him, or it just gives them that little extra bit of defensive prowess over a long period of time. And I've already touched on this. Tyrant Claws for Winged Hive Tyrant should be extra attacks on top of the main weapon. Now, going down to what I realistically think that we're going to get, GW has eluded that any sort of unit that is taken 2 or 3 of in any list is probably going to see some sort of points increases. I do anticipate that Exocrines are going to go up 5. You're bringing an Exocrine, you're specifically bringing him as a tech piece against, elite infantry, because that's the best profile to shoot into. Maleceptors are probably going up 5, and I'd like it to be minimal, because I would like it to be a choice of, are you going to bring a Trigon for 170 or a Maleceptor for 175? Are you going to bring a Malscepter for 175 or maybe a Winged Hive Tyrant for 190? Usually you're not going to see lists where that decision is made. Death Leaper is wildly good even for his points. However, he can just get, punked and just dropped off the table. I think for what he is, he'll probably go up 10. And then Neurolictors, I anticipate, will go up 5 to 10. A lot of people play without them, and I've dropped my list down from using 3 of them to using 2, but I do think that they'll go up about 5 points. They are also very efficient. Broodlord will probably just go down 5, not 10. Gene Stealers, like I said, I do think are going to go down, and there's a reason why I think all of the items here that I put at the top will go down. These are all models that synergize or have refresh models or were a part of the Christmas box. So anything in blue was a part of the Christmas box. Anything up here separated are models that have been range refreshed or are new. GW wants to incentivize the sale of more of those models. So the Broodlord going along with the new Gene Stealers, Termagants, part of the not the Christmas box, part of the Leviathan box set. Termagants are in the Christmas box, and then the Psychophage and the Screamer Killer. I don't think they're going to come down as many points as I really want, but I do think that they're going to drop about 15 points. The Psychophage and the Screamer Killer are not going to come down as much as I really want, but I do think that they're going to get a little bit of a point shave. GW, in my opinion, is not going to reverse course and give us back all of the 45 points for the Tyrant effects. I think they'll give us back 30. I think they're going to do a little bit of a point shave to see where our win rate comes in. We also don't know what the changes to other armies are going to be in the meta. The data slate is supposed to shake things up to the point that, if we just received my entire wish list worth of point decreases, you'd be able to bring 200 or 300 more points worth of stuff. I think the Flying Hive Tyrant will probably come down 10 to be an even 200. I think the Walking Hive Tyrant should come down 10. Him going up points, I think they anticipated that there would be no rules change to Will of the Hive Mind, so that it could only be used on battle tactics. I agree that he should stay expensive if Will of the Hive Mind works on any stratagem. It only working on battle tactics essentially makes him a little too expensive. Emissaries and Assimilators, I think they'll both drop below 300, but I don't think they're going to drop the 40 or 50 that I want. Carnifexes and Zoanthropes, same thing. I think they can be used. I just want GW to sweeten the pot a little bit. I want to think about whether or not I want to bring these or not. Whereas right now, I don't. I don't think about Carnifexes, and I don't think about Zoanthropes. I'm bringing other stuff. Last of all here, I know there's going to be some conjecture and some pushback potentially for this opinion, but I don't think we're going to see a change to the Spore Mine scoring or to 0 OC scoring units. I think this early in the edition, I think we've only been in the game for about 5 or 6 months now, is too early to pull the rug out from underneath all units, either Tyranids or otherwise, that have 0 OC that would normally be able to score. It's going to be restrictive, and that does not incentivize sales. I also don't think that this is good for the game in general. If you take away Spore Mine scoring, I think it takes away at least 30% of our win rate. So in a vacuum, if you took that away right now, we would drop to about 39%. And with no points decreases, other armies are just rising to the top. There's 5 or 6 that are consistently at the top right now that we have a hard time dealing with. So hopefully in the next 2 weeks here, we'll see if any of these predictions hold any water, if I was way off the mark, or if some of my list ideas or points changes end up landing on their mark. I'm much more curious to see if we end up getting rules changes or keyword additions than we are to get probably the anticipated points changes. If we do, hey, we saw Death Guard gain essentially a hyper contagion ability that were hyper adapted for Tyranids in 9th edition. Nobody anticipated that. I don't think so. So we have seen instances where GW rules writers are able to overhaul whole armies. Now, I didn't talk about it specifically, but I think that one detachment in particular that needs some help is Crusher Stampede. The monsters being cheaper, the enhancements are not good. The stratagems are good, but the detachment rule is not. Having to suffer damage to gain your benefit, as we see with Sisters, it works with Sisters because they can take cheap stuff. Crusher Stampede is relying on monsters that are anywhere from 125 to 245 points. And if you're including Norns in your list for some reason, that's 290 to 310. If you're going to play Crusher Stampede and have variability for the detachments that you see for Tyranids, you need to have cheap monsters. I think that's one of our biggest problems right now. If you disagree with me, that's okay. You can leave some of your predictions in the comments, or we can talk about it on the Tyranid Discord. Otherwise, I hope everybody had a wonderful holiday season, and we'll be talking shortly, hopefully in the next 2 weeks to come. There should be some fun things to review. Thanks again. My name's Torin, and I'll see you again on Hive Prometheus.